A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dr. Catherine Thamrai Arumugam from Department of Social and Preventive Medicine, University of Malaya, and I've just completed my Masters in Public Health, and by God's grace, I'll be pursuing my Doctorate in Public Health soon. And before we go on further with my presentation today, entitled Breast Milk Influence on Gross Motor Development, allow me to just give you a brief introduction about myself. Being the only girl, being the only daughter in the family, and growing up with my brothers, and yet I'm always regarded to be the strongest in the family. And believe me or not, ladies and gentlemen, I've even once actually broken the car bonnet of my brothers. And every time something like this happens at home, my mom will always say, and this strength, these strong hands, you got it all from the breast milk that I fed you with during your early days. But how true this statement is by my mom, let evidence speak for itself. So ladies and gentlemen, we all know along the years, breast milk has actually distinguished itself as an unmatched means of feeding, and it's always regarded as the best start for a child because it does not only provide the adequate nutrition for a child, but it's also a protective mechanism where it has the ability to avert even under 5 deaths, which are closely associated with inappropriate feeding practices, especially during the first year of an infant's life. But the saddening truth is that, ladies and gentlemen, not even half of infants worldwide are exclusively breastfed for the first 6 months of life, according to WHO recommendation. And why this happens is that one of the main reasons for early discontinuation or early cessation of exclusive breastfeeding among mothers is that due to poor maternal knowledge regarding breast milk benefit and also poor social support as well. And as the principal investigator of this study, I wanted to come up with a study to show these mothers, to portray to them in a very simple, understandable way, what are the positive impacts that breast milk can have to a child, and what are the positive impacts that it can give to during the early crucial life of a child. And thus our study actually aims to investigate whether children who are exclusively breastfed for the first 6 months of life are able to outperform their peers who are not exclusively breastfed in terms of gross motor development. And we see here this simple conceptual framework here. On the far left, there are few factors that actually influences a child's development, but in our study, the main independent variable would be breast milk, which comes under the nutritional factors. So the other factors would stand as confounding factors in our study, whereas the main dependent variable in our study would be gross motor, which is part of the sensory motor domain of a child's development, and the other two domains are not explored in our study due to limitation of time. And when we speak about this study, ladies and gentlemen, we want to have a look of what has already been known based on previous literature reviews. So we see there are various publications, studies done before this, which shows significant positive association between breastfeeding duration and also neurodevelopmental advantage found among these breastfed children. And there are also studies which actually shows that MRI scans and ultrasound brains that depicts a more matured brain among the children who are exclusively breastfed. So there is a healthy neurogenesis happening among children who are actually given breast milk, and this actually influences a child's development in a very positive way. But there are also researchers who actually say that it is not only the nutritional factors, but there are other confounding factors as well, like maternal intelligence and also parent-child interaction, home environment and stimulation that actually impacts towards a child development. So as for our study, this is a single institution-based cross-sectional study which was conducted in Klinik Kesihatan Rawang in Rawang Health Centre in the district of Gombak, which recruited 360 respondents who are Malaysian mothers aged above 18 years old with children aged between 6 to 36 months. Why 6 to 36 months is that the lower bound of age 6 months allows the completion of 6 months of exclusive breastfeeding, and during 3 years or 36 months the child is actually brought by the mother for a routine medical examination in the clinic. So the study instrument that we use in our study is a self-administered questionnaire, whereby the questionnaire, as we can see in the slide here, it is divided into two main parts. The first part actually explores all the factors that influences a child development, with breast milk and breastfeeding practices being the main independent variable, and we have the main dependent variable where we have the gross motor, which is assessed using a global assessment for development of a child, whereby it is accredited by American Academy of Pediatrics. We adapted the questionnaire from Ages and Stages Questionnaire 3. This is an example of how Ages and Stages Questionnaire 3 looks like. We have 15 sets of questions, which we use different set of questions for a different age interval for these children, and each set of questions will have 6 questions there, whereby, for example, you just ask the mother, is your child able to walk by himself without any assistance? There will be 3 choices of answer, yes, sometimes or no, and the scoring is 10, 5 and 0 respectively. And this scoring is actually computed all together, and the child is actually classified whether the child is having below cutoff value or close to cutoff value or above cutoff value in terms of gross motor scoring. And in terms of results that we have obtained during the study is that you can see there is two extreme ends where there are children, about 1/3 of them who do not receive exclusive breastfeeding at all, and we also have another end where there are children who receive exclusive breastfeeding for at least 6 months and above. And we see the pie chart here, whereby 1/3 of children with exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months, and then another 1/3 with artificial feeding or formula feeding, and another 1/3 making up the predominant and partial feeding as well. And in terms of other feeding practices, it is quite saddening to actually explore the truth, whereby we see here nearly a quarter of children are actually fed with water within the first 2 months of life. And there are other fluids as well besides water, for example, ritual fluids and also fruit juices, which is actually fed to more than 40% of children in the study. And more than 1/3 of children are actually started with formula milk even at birth itself. And we see here in terms of the outcome or the main dependent variable in our study, in terms of gross motor scoring, there's a small proportion of 2.5% of children who actually attained below cut-off value in terms of gross motor scoring, and there's another 6.1% close to cut-off values. This is all below cut-off value. And overall results of our study shows that odds of children who are exclusively breastfed with advanced gross motor attainment are actually 2.55 times higher compared to children who are not exclusively breastfed. And when we built the multiple logistic regression model, we found out that exclusive breastfeeding duration for 6 months, this variable actually stood as a very strong predictor for advanced gross motor attainment among children in our study. So as per discussion, there are strengths and limitations of this study as well. Limitations in terms of time and resources. So we were not able to explore all domains of a child development. So there are other domains apart from sensory motor. We only explored the gross motor development, but there are also socio-emotional and also cognitive language, which were the domains which we did not explore in the study. And in terms of strength, I would say, to the best knowledge of the principal investigator of this study, there's been no studies published in Malaysia that finds the association between breastfeeding practices in regards to a child development. So this is actually a novel study conducted in Malaysia. And as we know, we can conclude from the study that breast milk actually positively impacts in terms of development of a child, and thus we strongly recommend that we should actually strengthen breastfeeding policies in terms of working environment and also work policies as to encourage and to boost the motivation of mothers to be able to provide the best start for their children. And also in future, this research can actually be improvised in terms of exploring the other domains of a child development as well. And it is also important for us as public health advocates to tackle misconceptions that the community have in general regarding exclusive breastfeeding. And before I end, I would like to give a huge credit to few people in my life. The first one would be Associate Professor Dr. Mas Ayu, who is my supervisor in University of Malaya, who has been there throughout the study. And the little one right there, whom I've been cherishing my breastfeeding moments with for 18 months plus now. And also my mom, who has been there throughout this study, without whom the study would not be possible, who was a breastfeeding advocate herself for her family and friends, and who is not here with us today, and she has gone to be with the Lord 2 weeks back. But today is Mom's birthday, so this is for you, Amma. Thank you, everyone.